Hey, welcome back to Matt's Garage DIY. Today, we're going to be putting a K&N cold air intake into my '08 GMC Canyon. Alright, so the claim is more horsepower, more torque. We're going to see. I did a couple test runs, 0 to 100 times. For my US friends, that'd be 0 to 60 miles an hour. Averaged out a time of 10.6 in that 0 to 100. So we're going to see what kind of a difference we get after we switch and put this in. Just a real quick look before we start putting it all together. This is everything that was in the box. Some pipes, some clamps, a couple filters, the shield, some gaskets, and of course some instructions. Just for anybody that doesn't have an '08, this is good for 2007 to 12 Canyons, Colorados, '07 to '09 H3s for the L5-3.7 liter engine. There you go. Step one. Disconnect the negative terminal from your battery. Step two, disconnect your mass air sensor. First with a wiring harness, depressing this locking tab. Then unscrew the sensor itself. Disconnect the fresh air inlet tube. Squeeze either side to depress the clamp. The hose simply disconnects. Next up, loosen this hose clamp on the intake. Next up, we're going to remove the air box. Mine is held in with two 13mm bolts. First one down here in the front, you can see way down there, and then the second one right there at the back. With both bolts removed, now we lift out the air box. There is a tube that fits in the side, so you do have to slide it slightly towards the center, and then it just lifts out. Now for the install. Take one of the silicone rings, slide that onto your air intake resonator. I'm going to push that all the way back till it hits this tab. Go. One of the hose clamps provided. There we go. And just tighten that up with a flathead screwdriver. Now for the heat shield, you first start by installing this large L-shaped bracket. Requires two of the little bolts, the nylon hex nuts, and 4 washers. This goes on the inside. Another washer on the back, then the nylon hex nut. Again, washer on the back. You can see nylon hex nut. I'll just tighten those up and we'll move on to the next step. Small bracket. Repeat the same for the other side of the heat shield. Again, that bracket mounts on the inside. Bolt, washer, through the holes. Another washer on the back. And then again, nylon hex nut. Installing the rubber weather stripping. You can see, got a nice edge to clamp on. Basically, I'm going to start right here, work my way all around the heat shield. All right, I'm going to loosen this bracket off just to tuck that in behind. There you go. There's a second small piece of weather stripping that you put around this hole. It does need to be trimmed for length as well. I've made sure that I've put my seam at the bottom, partly for aesthetics, so you won't be able to see it when you look under the hood, but also if any moisture gets trapped in here, it'll just drain out the bottom. Next up, small filter and adapter from the outside going in, and then put the filter in on the inside. Time to install the heat shield. Basically just sets right in. This longer bracket you will reuse your existing or your original airbox bolt. That's going to go back through. Use the original hole. For the rear one, on my truck and on some models, you'll see there's a hole here. It's not quite big enough. You need to drill that out to a 1/2 inch. Then a nut insert is provided in the kit. Stick that in there, and then the L bracket will bolt into that hole. 1/2 inch drill. Insert. Now we can set our heat shield in place and bolt it all in. There's a little fuse panel right here. I did have to loosen the nut and adjust the orientation ever so slightly more vertical, as it was kind of interfering with the back edge of the heat shield. But just one nut at the top, you can loosen that off, twist that as you need. Airbox is ready to bolt in. Again, we're using the original bolt at the front. In the back, one of the new bolts, this big thick washer, as well as a flat washer. Pull that in. Doesn't seem to be quite long enough. I'm going to leave out the big fat washer. So we're going to try just the thin washer and the bolt. There we go. Works much better. Just going to tighten both these up. The airbox is installed. I did have to make one small modification. The large L bracket on this side, although the schematic showed it mounted inside, I ended up changing it to be mounted outside. That just allowed for a better seal along the bottom and to follow the fender better. Next up, support bracket for the air tube. You're going to want the leg that's bent closest to a 90. That is going to attach right down here at this hole. You're given a couple of these little round-headed metric screws. Mine takes a 5/32 Allen key in the end, lock washer, and a regular washer. Put that all through. There you go. I will tighten that up once everything's in place, but that's roughly where this next piece goes. Make sure you take your intake tube, foam gasket that's provided, peel the backer off, and stick that on right there. All right, with the bracket installed, now there's an adapter plate for your mass airflow sensor. Put that on, a couple long bolts that are provided. Bolt that up. Then your mass airflow sensor drops right in, and you can bolt that in place. All right, this is what it looks like all bolted up. Time to install the air tube. Take another clamp, put that on my little silicone boot up here. Feed this end into the airbox, and then work that back into the boot. Push that in until it's nice and tight. Then we'll snug this back up. There we go. Snug but not completely tight. I'll do some final adjustments on that after. You still have this little support bracket, and there is a molded in nut on the bottom. You have one remaining M6 cap screw. That will need to be bolted into the bottom, and then you can tighten both of those back up. All right, next up, your filter, this big sort of trumpet shaped piece, and your large clamp. Sits in like that. Clamp over top, tighten that up. Coming down the home stretch, take your little second silicone ring. We're going to slide that onto the end of the air tube that sticks into our heat shield area. Steel clamp, that over. Tighten that up. We take our filter, this end, adjust the light there a little bit. This end, we're now gonna, actually we're gonna put our clamp on first. Then we will stick this into the boot, tighten up the second clamp. Basically, installation is done. I'm going to double check all the connections. We'll reconnect the mass airflow sensor and the battery, and then we'll fire it up. All right, time for some test laps. We'll see how it compares. So after a total of 5 trial runs, I came in with an average time of 10.3 seconds. That's a full 0.3 of a second difference between stock and then the cold air install. So that's definitely a measurable or noticeable difference. So there you have it. Cold air intake install on your 07 to 12 GMC Canyon Chev Colorado. Hope you liked it. Look forward to your comments. Stay tuned for my next video.